Hello, I hope you're having a great day. Ready to move forward into our book. We're going to go into section 2, and it says how relationship changes everything. Before I do, I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you, even if I don't know you personally, and just really hoping that you're doing well, and hoping that this information is stirring something inside of you to dig deeper and just do a little self-analysis. I'm going to break chapter 4 into 2 sections, so this one might be a little bit shorter. So chapter 4 is actually titled Human Hardware and Software Made for Relationships with Dr. Gary Sipsey. So the quote is Genesis 2:18. It's found in the Message, and it says, God said, "It's not good for the man to be alone. I'll make him a helper, a companion." At 98 years old, she sits for hours each day by her window in the local convalescent home. No one has been by to see her in 6 months. Jeff grew up in a minister's home and hated it, especially the God of his father. Jesus just didn't make sense. At 20, he hit the wall hard. Drinking and going 120 miles per hour, he hydroplaned and wrecked, flipping the car at least 5 times. He walked away without a scratch. A miracle? He wonders. But he knows his dad prayed for him every day. He's now a bartender and often wonders who God is, still hating the stupidity of Christianity. He and his dad don't talk. Consumed with anger, Joey hasn't loved Angela for 6 years. Nearly every morning, Angela sips her coffee and wonders whatever happened to the love they once had. He left her last week for another woman. Cindy has always been a daddy's girl. She and her mom never really clicked. Last month, her dad fell over dead from a massive heart attack. Though her mom is still alive, Cindy feels orphaned. 8-year-old Tommy's best friend in the whole world, his dad, moved out last month. The nights really seem long without him around, particularly for Tommy's mom, who is becoming more and more depressed. Ed never talked much growing up. He wasn't allowed to. Every time he tried, he was beaten down by his parents. They just don't get me. They never have. Samantha never has been understood. Her parents loathe the way she dresses and are constantly criticizing her. She connects very poorly with kids at school. Just last night, she contemplated a plan for suicide for the first time. Alone. It's one of the most powerful and tragic words in the English language. Why? Because we were not made to be alone. It's said that kids really aren't afraid of the dark. They're afraid of being alone in the dark. Big kids are the same way, especially in the darkness of life. Those fears I, Josh, had as a young boy of being alone in a universe of nothingness, left with nobody to care for or love me, are universal. Whether we admit it or not, we all want to belong. We also crave to know that if we die today, somebody would care. That's because we were made for relationships, to love and to be loved. When we're left alone and to ourselves, our hearts eventually grow cold over time as we drift into depression and apathy, and slowly but surely we die, at least inside. But we don't have to. Research in the area of psychology is beginning to show us why and how this downward spiral into loneliness happens, and it increasingly emphasizes the power of relationships. Many of us, before picking up this book, may have been under the impression that much of this is strictly behavioral. You may have thought, for instance, my relational problems are because of the way I act. If I can just change the way I behave, things will get better. Of course, that's always easier said than done, and you'll see why. What you're about to learn is that the way we think, act, and feel in relationships is based on core relational beliefs that we develop and maintain literally from the cradle to the grave. Beliefs that affect and infect how we do relationships with one another and with God. Beliefs that are wired into the physical, biological components of our brain known as the limbic system and provide us with answers to why we do the things we do. But don't think for a second that because they are wired into our brains that we can't change, because we can. And the answer is found in the context of our most intimate relationships. Hardwired to connect. Parenting in the 21st century has quite a different look and feel compared to decades past. Those in primitive culture had to rely on everyone else living around them to survive. Even as late as into the mid-20th century, living and interacting in a community was the norm. Front porches, bowling alleys, community gatherings, carnivals, town meetings, and even the family dinner table were the settings for meaningful conversation and connection. But something has changed. Divorces, they're happening at a very steady rate. The numbers of single-parent and fatherless homes have increased, and with the poor economy, two incomes are no longer a luxury, but a necessity just for most families to stay afloat. As a result, casual daily, I'm there for you conversations at home, community social events, and visits to the next door neighbor are things of the past. And at the same time, more of our kids are suffering from depression, anxiety, drug abuse, attention deficit, and conduct disorders, and suicide than ever before. Is there a link? That's exactly what researchers at the University of Dartmouth Medical School wanted to find out. So they brought together a team of pediatric medical doctors and neuroscientists and combined with them the youth service professionals and scholars who study civic society to conduct a thorough examination of the already existing research. They embarked upon a serious effort to integrate the hard science of infant attachment and child and adolescent brain development with sociological evidence of how civil society shapes outcomes for children. And what they found is fascinating. They reported that all scientific research now shows that from the time a baby is born, a baby's brain is biologically already formed to connect in relationships. In fact, this study was so huge that an executive report was written to the nation from the Commission on Children at Risk, and others around the country have taken notice. For example, this is a major report, says William Raspberry, nationally syndicated columnist. Diane Sawyer in Good Morning American said this was a real wake-up call for American parents. New York Post said it was a stunning must-read report. And here are some of the main points taken from the executive summary of the study. 1, in large measure, what's causing this crisis of American childhood is a lack of connectedness. We mean two kinds of connectedness. Close connections to other people and deep connections to moral and spiritual meaning. 2, much of this report is a presentation of scientific evidence, largely from the field of neuroscience, which concerns our basic biology and how our brains develop, showing that the human child is hardwired to connect. We are hardwired for other people and for moral meaning and openness to the transcendent. Meeting these basic needs for connection is essential to health and to human flourishing. And 3, for what may be the first time, a diverse group of scientists and other experts on children's health is publicly recommending that our society pay considerably more attention to young people's moral, spiritual, and religious needs. 2 crucial questions. In addition to the study at Dartmouth Medical School, a team of researchers at Johns Hopkins Medical School set out on a 30-year study to find out if a single related cause existed for mental illness, hypertension, malignant tumors, coronary heart disease, and suicide. We just had an electrical surge. After studying 1,377 people over a 30-year period, the single common denominator was not diet or exercise, not at all. They found instead that the most significant predictor of these 5 calamities was a lack of closeness to the parents, especially the father. Why? Stress. When a child grows up in a loving, intimate home, particularly with a father, the child is better capable of handling stress in life. Each one of us responds to life's stressful situations the way we do for a reason. We are hardwired as human beings, truly created and programmed to, one, long for deep, lasting, and satisfying relationships, and two, seek, search, and live for a destiny that is greater than ourselves. Now, these traits are part of what it means to be created in the image of God. Important though this is, that's still not the whole picture. Another set of factors, this one arising out of attachment theory and research, is understanding what shapes the way we think, feel, and act, creating our basic perception of the world. This perception of self-definition and relatedness develops as early as infancy and continues to progress over time in our life, affecting us every minute of every day. And there's actually new science showing us that even an unborn child in the womb is developing these concepts and the need for connectivity. And so there's a whole new level of neuroscience that is bringing in new information, consistently showing us that this information is accurate. Now, at the heart of these factors are two essential questions that all of us instinctively ask. So I want you to really hone in on this. Number one, am I worthy of love? Number two, are others capable of loving me? So if that's what you're having to learn from the womb out, imagine or go back to your story, go back to your narrative, to what really happened in your world, and try to see if you were able to find out in what you were picking up on a conscious and unconscious level. Am I worthy of love, which would be based off of how the caregivers, the primary caregivers, and again, siblings, the relational dynamics, if you're crying and your parents aren't attuned to you for whatever reason, at a very young age, you may start to begin to believe that you're not worthy of love just simply because, maybe your mom's depressed or your dad's absent or whatever that is. And then the second thing is, are others capable of loving me? So they go on to write, your answers to these questions, both cognitively and emotionally, and I'm going to even slip in there, even biologically, because as you're having thoughts, cognition, and emotion, you're also always having a biological component. So you're basically scanning and reading your environment and your relational attachments based on what you think, your emotions, but also your sensations, your neurology. So your answer to these questions, both cognitively, emotionally, and again biologically, are the basis for the formation of your core relational beliefs. And they have a profound impact on how you see yourself and on the way you relate in the closest and most important relationships in your life, including your relationship with yourself and with God. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. Before the next section will take us into developing this concept a little bit deeper. But I would love for you to pause and again consider what really is your story. I know that sometimes when we go back and we visit our past, many don't want to do that, and there's an interesting reason why. And so if you find yourself blocking yourself from doing that, give yourself compassion and ask yourself, why do I not want to go back and take a look? A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, why is that even necessary? Well, it is, because it helps to explain where you are right now and what's going on. And so with that empowerment, it gives you a chance to process, gives you a chance to have some compassion and understanding, and it gives you a chance to even go back to those times and bring some type of nurturance that you did not receive. We can do it here in our present time right now. You're able to nurture yourself and go back and validate those things. And again, it may not be that you had a very abusive mom or dad. It might just be that they were present geographically, but they were not present emotionally. And we can pick up on that as human beings. We can empathically, instinctively pick up on that. And so I would just encourage you to go back and look at, your formative years and your story, and kind of start poking into what those relational dynamics might have looked like. Were you listened to? Did someone help you deal with your overwhelming emotions? We would say that when you got dysregulated, which is when you kind of flip your lid, or you get scared, or whatever that is, did you have somebody there that helped co-regulate and helped you get back into a place of balance, neurologically, emotionally, cognitively, or were you kind of left on your own to figure it out? So again, we're not looking to assign blame or fault. That there's no place for that. We don't need to go and accuse our caregivers of what they did or didn't do right. But what we should do is we should be real with what we lived through, because it just helps to explain where we are. And as a counselor and a clinician and pastor and life coach, relationships really are so significant. They're so tied to a myriad of problems that people struggle with. And this is why, if we take a look at it and we spend time doing some self-analysis, it can bring us to better understanding. And then if you find that you're sort of in a funky state with relationship, again, we're talking about yourself, we're talking about others, and we're talking about God, then I just want you to know that there's something you can do about it. It's not that you're stuck, and your past doesn't have to define your present or your future. But if you don't do anything about it, and you just kind of let life come at you however it may, you're kind of going to get stuck with whatever you get stuck with. Okay, we have to be engaged, we have to be interactive, we need to be intentional and purposeful about our life and our destinies. We've got to put our attention and our energy and our focus into really getting the results that we're hoping for. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and just pause here, and join me again on the next section. Any questions? I'm definitely up for conversation, and I'm hoping that this is stimulating you intellectually, but even just activating your heart. And I just want to encourage you that this is something that can be challenging, but you're safe, and I'm here to do this with you. So don't feel like you're going at this alone. But I promise you that on the other side of all this, it's going to be so worth it. So I will see you again, and I will say God bless. Thank you.